Right now, somewhere beneath the Atlantic Ocean, a single cable no thicker than a garden hose is carrying your emails, your bank transfers, your video calls, basically everything that keeps your life running. And Russia knows exactly where it is. That's not a theory. That's not a thriller plot. That is the reality of how the modern internet actually works. So here's the question nobody wants to sit with. What actually happens the day Russia decides to cut it? Before we get into this, if you've never thought about how fragile the internet really is, hit that like button right now and subscribe, because this channel breaks down the stuff that actually matters. Alright, let's get into it. The internet feels invisible. Feels like it's just up there, floating in the cloud. But almost 99% of all international data, everything crossing between continents, travels through physical cables sitting on the ocean floor. Roughly 400 of them, stretching over 1.3 million kilometers worldwide. These cables aren't buried deep. Most of them sit right on the seabed. Some sections near coastlines are buried just a few feet under sand. And here's the part that keeps Western intelligence officials up at night. They run through some of the most strategically sensitive corridors on the planet. The North Sea, the Baltic, the waters around the UK, the Greenland-Iceland-UK gap. Russia has spent years mapping all of it. NATO officials have openly said that Russian submarines and underwater drones have been systematically surveying undersea infrastructure across Europe. Not occasionally, systematically. There's even a dedicated unit inside Russian naval intelligence, GUJI, whose entire job is underwater special operations. They operate submarines designed specifically for deep-water sabotage. Not for fighting ships, for cutting cables and interfering with pipelines. And we've already seen what happens when this infrastructure gets hit. In October 2023, 2 undersea cables in the Baltic Sea were damaged, one connecting Finland to Germany, another linking Sweden to Estonia. Investigations pointed to a Chinese cargo ship dragging its anchor. Possibly accidental, possibly not. In February 2024, 3 cables in the Red Sea were cut, allegedly by Houthi forces. A large chunk of internet traffic between Europe and Asia had to be rerouted almost overnight. Each of those incidents caused disruption. Neither of them was a coordinated, deliberate attack by a military power. Now imagine Russia, with purpose, with planning, with the capability, decides to do this at scale. The immediate chaos wouldn't look like a movie. Your phone wouldn't go dead in 10 seconds. What would happen first is slower, and in some ways more terrifying. Financial markets would start seeing transaction delays. International wire transfers would slow down or fail. Cloud services, think Microsoft Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, would start experiencing what engineers call latency events. Your Netflix might buffer. Your Zoom call might drop. But your bank system's trying to communicate with clearinghouses in New York or London. That's where things get genuinely serious. Here's something most people don't realize. The global financial system runs on real-time data. Stock trades, currency exchanges, interbank settlements. They're not stored somewhere offline waiting to be processed. They move through these cables in milliseconds around the clock. When those connections degrade, the system doesn't pause politely and wait. It starts making errors. And in financial infrastructure, errors compound fast. But the financial system is just the beginning. Military communications, GPS timing signals, emergency coordination between governments. All of it has dependencies on this cable network that most people have never thought about for a single second of their lives. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The West is not ready for this. Let's be honest about something. The governments of the US, UK, and Australia have known about this vulnerability for years. Decades, actually. And the response has been, at best, slow. At worst, dangerously complacent. There are a few reasons for that. First, undersea cables are mostly owned by private companies. Google, Meta, Microsoft, they've poured billions into building their own cable networks over the last 10 years. Which sounds reassuring until you realize that private companies don't have navies. They can't patrol 1.3 million kilometers of ocean floor. And when a cable gets cut in international waters, the legal question of who responds, who pays, and how fast repair ships can even get there, that entire process is a bureaucratic nightmare that can take weeks. The average repair time for a damaged undersea cable is somewhere between 2 weeks and 2 months depending on location and weather. In the deep ocean, repair ships have to lower specialized equipment to depths of several kilometers, locate a break that might be only a few inches wide, haul the cable to the surface, splice it, and lower it back down. During that entire window, traffic has to reroute through whatever backup paths exist, and those backup paths are already running close to capacity on a normal day. Now here's where it gets geopolitically uncomfortable. Russia wouldn't need to cut every cable. That's not how this kind of operation would work. The strategy, and Western analysts have written about this openly, would be targeted disruption. Cut 2 or 3 cables in the right locations at the right moment. Maybe during a military crisis. Maybe during an election cycle. Maybe just before a major NATO decision. The goal isn't to turn the lights off completely. The goal is to create enough confusion, enough economic pressure, enough public panic, that Western governments are dealing with a domestic crisis instead of a foreign one. It's leverage. And leverage doesn't have to be used to be effective. Sometimes just knowing the other side has the knife is enough to change how you negotiate. The UK is particularly exposed here. Almost all of Britain's international internet traffic flows through a small number of cable landing stations. Places like Bude in Cornwall, Southport, and Porthcurno. These are physical buildings on coastlines where undersea cables come ashore. Some of them date back decades and have security arrangements that, to put it diplomatically, were designed for a different era. Security researchers and journalists have physically walked up to some of these sites and found remarkably little standing between them and the outside world. Australia faces a different version of the same problem. Geographically isolated, heavily dependent on cables running through the Indo-Pacific, a region where Chinese naval activity has been increasing steadily. Australia's 2023 Critical Infrastructure Review flagged undersea cables as a Tier 1 vulnerability. Flagging it and fixing it are two very different things. The United States has more redundancy built in more cables, more landing points, more satellite backup. But even the U.S. military has admitted that in a full-spectrum conflict, undersea cable disruption would meaningfully degrade coordination capacity. Not cripple it, but degrade it. And in modern warfare, degraded communications at the wrong moment can change outcomes. So what's actually being done? NATO launched a dedicated undersea infrastructure coordination cell in 2023. Several European countries have started joint naval patrols of cable corridors. There's been serious investment in low Earth orbit satellite networks, Starlink being the most visible, as a partial backup layer. And some financial institutions have quietly started building more localized redundancy into their settlement systems. But the honest answer is we are behind. The infrastructure that carries the modern world was built for commerce, not conflict. And the people who want to exploit that gap have been studying it far longer than the people trying to defend it. The ocean floor is the new front line, and most people have no idea it's even there. If this made you think about something you've never considered before, that's exactly why this channel exists. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this with someone who thinks the internet just works by magic. Because understanding how fragile this system really is, that's the first step to taking it seriously. We'll see you in the next one.